I'm so tired. Go to sleep for this hour, the devil have him said. Even for 10 minutes and you'll be fresh for a week. You've had only a few hours or days now, and most of that a lot in the cold. You must sleep. Sleep? They rely on you. I won't. I'll sleep tomorrow, he said aloud, and forced his hand to unlock his chest and take out his letter. He saw the other one, the Portuguese one, was safe and untouched, and that pleased him. He took a clean quill and began to write. April 21st, 1600, 5th hour, dusk, 133rd day from Santa Maria Island, Chile, on the 32nd degree north line of latitude. Sea still high and wind strong, and the ship rigged as before, the color of the sea dull gray-green and bottomless. We're still running before the wind along a course of 270 degrees, veering to north-northwest, making way briskly about 2 leagues, each of 3 miles this hour. Large reefs shaped like a triangle were sighted at half the hour, bearing northeast by north half a league distant. 3 men died in the night of the scurvy. Joris, sailmaker, Rise, gunner, second mate Dehan. After commending their souls to God, the captain general still being sick, I cast them into the sea without shrouds, for there was no one to make them. Today, bosun Reiklaf died. I could not take the declension of the sun at noon today, again due to overcast, but I estimate we are still on course, and that landfall in the Japans should be soon. But how soon? He asked the sea lantern that hung above his head, swaying with the pitch of the ship. How to make a chart? There must be a way, he told himself for the millionth time. How to set longitude? There must be a way. How to keep vegetables fresh? What is scurvy? They say it's a flux from the sea, boy, Alban Karadak had said. He was a huge-bellied, great-hearted man with a tangled grey beard. But you could boil the vegetables and keep the broth? It sickens, lad. No one's ever discovered a way to store it. They say that Francis Drake sails soon. No, you can't go, boy. I'm almost 14. You let Tim and Watts sign on with him, and he needs apprentice pilots. They're 16. You're just 13. Then up the coast to the unexplored region, to the Californias, to find the Straits of Anian that join the Pacific with the Atlantic. From the Californias all the way to Newfoundland, the Northwest Passage at long last. The supposed Northwest Passage, lad. No one's proved that legend yet. He will. He's admiral now, and will be the first English ship through Magellan's Pass. The first in the Pacific. The first. I'll never get another chance like this. Oh, yes, he will, and he'll never breach Magellan's secret way, lest he can steal a rudder or capture a Portuguese pilot to guide him through. How many times I must tell you, a pilot must have patience. Learn patience, boy. You've Please? No. Why? Because he'll be gone 2-3 years, perhaps more. The weak and the young will get the worst of the food and the least of the water. And of the 5 ships that go, only his will come back. You'll never survive, boy. Then I'll sign for his ship only. I'm strong. He'll take me. Listen, boy, I was with Drake and Judith, his 50-tonner at San Juan de Ulua, when we and Admiral Hawkins, he was in Minion, when we fought our way out of harbor through the dung-eating Spaniards. We've been trading slaves for McGuinea to the Spanish Main, but we had no Spanish license for the trade, and they tricked Hawkins and trapped our fleet. They'd 13 great ships, we 6. We sank 3 of theirs. They sank our Swallow, Angel, Caravel, and the Jesus of Lubeck. Oh yes, Drake fought us out of the trap and brought us home, with 11 men aboard to tell the tale. Hawkins had 15. Out of 408 jolly Jack Tars. Drake is merciless, boy. He wants glory and gold, but only for Drake, and too many men are dead proving it. But I won't die. I'll be one of... No! You've apprenticed for 12 years. You've 10 more to go, and then you're free. But until that time, until 1588. You'll learn how to build ships and how to command them. You'll be Albin Caradoc, master shipwright and pilot and member of Trinity House, or you'll never have a license. And if you don't have a license, you'll never pilot any ship in English waters. You'll never command the quarterdeck of any English ship in any waters, because that was good King Harry's law. God rest his soul. It was a great Mary Tudor's law. May her soul burn in hell. It's the Queen's law. May she reign forever. It's England's law, and the best sea law that's ever been. Blackthorn remembered how he had hated his master then and hated Trinity House, the monopoly created by Henry VIII in 1514 for the training and licensing of all English pilots and masters, and hated his 12 years in semi-bondage, without which he knew he could never get the one thing in the world he wanted. And he had hated Albin Caradoc even more when, to everlasting glory, Drake and his 100-ton sloop, the Golden Hind, had miraculously come back to England after disappearing for 3 years. The first English ship to circumnavigate the globe, bringing with her the richest haul of plunder aboard ever brought back to those shores. An incredible 1.5 million sterling in gold, silver, spices, and plate. That 4 of the 5 ships were lost, and 8 of every 10 men were lost, and Tim and Watt were lost. And a captured Portuguese pilot had led the expedition for Drake through the Magellan into the Pacific, did not assuage his hatred. That Drake had hanged one officer, excommunicated the chaplain Fletcher, and failed to find the Northwest Passage, did not detract from national admiration. The Queen took 50% of the treasure and knighted him. The gentry and merchants who had put up the money for the expedition received 300% profit and pleaded to underwrite his next corsair voyage, and all seamen begged to sail with him. Because he did get plunder, he did come home, and with their share of the booty, the lucky few who survived were rich for life. I would have survived, Blackthorn told himself. I would, and my share of the treasure then would have been enough to reef ahead. He felt the cry first more than he heard it. Then, mixed with the gale, he heard the wailing scream again. He was out of the cabin and up the companionway onto the quarterdeck, his heart pounding, his throat parched. It was dark night now and pouring. He was momentarily near horizontal rain and tasted its sweetness, then turned his back on the squall. He saw that Hendrik was paralyzed with terror. The bow lookout, Matsker, cowered near the prow, shouting incoherently, pointing ahead. Then he too looked beyond the ship. The reef was barely 200 yards ahead, great black claws of rocks pounded by the hungry sea. The foaming line of a surf stretched port and starboard, broken intermittently. The gale was lifting huge swaths of spume and hurling them at the night blackness. A forepeak halyard snapped and the highest top-gallant spar was carried away. The mast shuddered in its bed but held, and the sea bore the ship inexorably to its death. "All hands on deck!" the Blackthorn shouted, and rang the bell violently. The noise brought Hendrik out of his stupor. "We're lost!" he screamed in Dutch. "Oh, Lord Jesus, help us! Get the crew on deck! You've been asleep! You've both been asleep!" Blackthorn shoved him towards the companionway, held on to the wheel, slipped the protecting lashing from the spokes, braced himself, and hung the wheel hard aport. He exerted all his strength as the rudder bit into the turret. The whole ship shuddered. Then the prow began to swing with increasing velocity as the wind bore down, and soon they were broadside to the sea in the wind. The storm's topsails bellied and gamely tried to carry the weight of the ship, and all the ropes took the strain. Howling, the following sea towered above them, and they were making way, parallel to the reef when he saw the great wave. He shouted a warning at the men who were coming from the forecastle and hung on for his life. The sea fell on the ship, and she heeled, and he thought they'd floundered, but she shook herself like a wet terrier and swung out of the trough. Water cascaded away through the scuppers, and he gasped for air. He saw that the corpse of the bosun that had been put on deck for burial tomorrow was gone, and that following wave was coming in even stronger. It caught Hendrik and lifted him, gasping and struggling over the side and out to sea. Another wave roared across the deck, and Blackthorn locked one arm through the wheel, and the water passed him by. Now Hendrik was 50 yards to port. The wash sucked him back alongside. Then a giant comber threw him high above the ship, held him there for a moment, shrieking, then took him away and pulped him against the rock spine and consumed him. The ship nosed into the sea, trying to make way. Another halyard gave in, the block and tackle swung wildly until tangled with the rigging. Vink and another man pulled themselves onto the quarterdeck and leaned on the wheel to help. Blackthorn could see the encroaching reef to starboard. Nearer now. Ahead into port were more outcrops, but he saw gaps in here and there. Get aloft, Vink! Foresails out! Foot by foot, Vink and two seamen hauled themselves into the shrouds of the foremast rigging as others below leaned on the ropes to give them a hand. Watch out forward! Blackthorn shouted. The sea foamed along the deck and took another man with it, and brought the corpse of the bosun aboard again. The bow soared out of the water and smashed down once more, bringing more water aboard. Vink and the other man cursed the sail out of its ropes. Abruptly it fell open, cracked like a cannonade as the wind filled it, and the ship lurched. Vink and his helpers hung there, swaying over the sea, then began their descent. Reef! Reef ahead! Vink screamed. Blackthorn and the other man swung the wheel to starboard. The ship hesitated, then turned and cried out as the rocks, barely awash, found the side of the ship, but it was then oblique below, and the rock nose crumbled. The timbers held safe, and the men aboard began to breathe once more. Blackthorn saw a break in the reef ahead and committed the ship to it. The wind was harder now, the sea more furious. The ship swerved with a gust, and the wheel spun out of their hands. Together they grabbed it and set her course again. But she bobbed and twisted drunkenly. Sea flooded aboard and burst into the forecastle, smashing one man against the bulkhead. The whole deck washed like the one above. Man the pumps! Blackthorn shouted. He saw two men go below. The rain was slashing his face, and he squinted against the pane. The binnacle light and after-riding light had long since been extinguished. Then, as another gust shoved the ship further off course, the seamen slipped, and again the wheel spun out of their grasp. The man shrieked as a spoke smashed the side of his head, and he lay there at the mercy of the sea. Blackthorn pulled him up and held him until the frothing comber had passed. Then he saw that the man was dead, so he let him slump into the sea chair, and the next sea cleaned the quarterdeck of him. The gulch through the reef was 3 points to windward, and, try as he could, Blackthorn could not gain away. He searched desperately for another channel, but he knew there was none. So he let her fall off from the wind momentarily to gain speed, then swung her hard to windward again. She gained way a fraction and held the course. There was a wailing, tormented shudder as the keel scraped the razor spine below, and all aboard imagined they saw the oak timbers burst apart and the sea flood in. The ship reeled forward out of control now. Blackthorn shouted for help, but no one heard him, so he fought the wheel alone against the sea. Once he was flung aside, but he groped back and held on again, wondering in his thickening mind how the rudder had survived so long. In the neck of the pass, the sea became a maelstrom, driven by the tempest and hemmed in by the rocks. Huge waves smashed at the reef, then reeled back to flight, the incomer until the waves fought among themselves and attacked on all quarters of the compass. The ship was sucked into the vortex, broadside and helpless. "Piss on you, Storm!" Blackthorn raged. "Get your dung-eating hands off my ship!" The wheel spun again and threw him away, and the deck heeled sickeningly. The bowsprit caught a rock and tore loose, part of the rigging with it, and she righted herself. The foremast was bending like a bow, and it snapped. The men on deck fell on the rigging with axes to cut adrift as the ship floundered down the raging channel. They hacked the mast free, and it went over the side, and the one man went with it, caught in the tangled mess. The man cried out, trapped, but there was nothing they could do, and they watched as he and the mast appeared and disappeared alongside, then came back no more. Vink and the others who were left looked back at the quarterdeck and saw Blackthorn defying the storm like a madman. They crossed themselves and doubled their prayers, some weeping with fear, and hang on for life. The strait broadened for an instant, and the ship slowed, but ahead it narrowed ominously again, and the rocks seemed to grow, to tower over them. The current ricocheted off one side, taking the ship with it, turned her abeam again, and flung her to her doom. Blackthorn stopped cursing the storm and fought the wheel to port, and hung there, his muscles knotted against the strain. But the ship knew not her rudder, and neither did the sea. "Turn, you from hell!" he gasped, his strength ebbing fast. "Help me!" The sea race quickened, and he felt his heart near bursting, but still he strained against the press of the sea. He tried to keep his eyes focused, but his vision reeled, the colors wrong and fading. The ship was in the neck and dead, but just then the keel scraped in a mud shoal. The shock turned her head. The rudder bit into the sea, and then the wind and the sea joined to help, and together they spun her before the wind, and she sped through the pass to safety into the bay beyond.